Live from Brooklyn, it's Ask an Engineer.
I like that video game. It's a live like representation of what it's like to try to get a DigiKey order in before they're like late night cut off.
It's like,
All right, it's let's pick a place in the background. It's me, Lady Ada, with me, Mr. and Lady Ada.
Hello.
We're Adafruit, and it's time for Ask Engineer. I'm the engineer, broadcast live from Brooklyn, where we have our factory, where we have all of our kitting and soldering and videoing and coding and kitting and shipping and more and more and more. It's not nonstop. We're so busy, never boring.
Yeah, this has been a big week.
Ooh, but
we're glad to share a lot of it with you. And speaking of, this show is jam-packed. So each week we're kind of changing around the show so we can get the most amount of content in. So there's some repeat features. We'll skip some weeks, and then there's some things we're like, well, we'll spend a lot of time on it because we're like in the arc of a project, like Fruit Jam right now is interesting. Each week the show will be a little different, and then we're looking to also change the times because we do need to do it during the daytime at some point. We're going to try to wrap that up by April-ish. We will see.
Okay,
we'll let everyone know. But on tonight's show,
ooh,
we got a lot.
Yeah, what's going on?
But you can save a lot too. The code is Hypercase. I thought that sounded cool. Hypercase, 10% off in the Adafruit store, all the way up to 11:59 p.m. Show and tell, we just did it. We showed and shared some cool projects from the Adafruit team. We'll talk a little bit about that. We have some from Desk of Ladyada things that I'm gonna show. The very beginning of this particular show, I have a preview of our new intro. So we'll show the whole thing, but maybe in a slightly different way. We're excited because we like to change the graphics up and new vibes, new themes for 2025. We'll do JP's product pick of the week. We do that every Tuesday. This is the highlight we show on Ask an Engineer from the mailbag. Just kind of a fun series of things we did earlier in the week. We have some ideas how you too can feel good about using social media. We have some open source hardware news like our guides and more. 3D printing, we have the segment Rapid Render that's using tools to really accelerate what you're doing with 3D. There's a million different tools. No Pedro tried them out. Most of them we'll never use and never hear them again, but maybe one will be interesting. We'll see. NPI, new product introduction. This week, Ladyada, I'm not going to mispronounce it, so
I believe it's Boreas.
Boreas. If someone knows for sure, we tried to look on the videos. We're like, oh, but
none of the videos
say the name.
Say the name.
But anyways, we'll show their new product introduction, brought to you by DigiKey and Adafruit this week. New products, we got a bunch. We have top secrets, so many top secrets. We answer your questions. We store them out throughout the week. And then we also will answer them from Discord at the end of the show, adafruit.it/Discord. All that and more on, you guessed it, Ask an Engineer.
Da, da, da.
Okay, so Ladyada, they have free stuff that they can get. You don't have to go over it, 10% off. Same day in New York City if you order before 11 a.m. And a lot of people are using it now.
Yeah, that's good.
The Desk of Ladyada got a new fresh coat of paint.
I love this cute
animation. And we're going to show it.
It's even got my little Luxa lamp.
Yeah, so we're going to show it. It's going to look familiar because it's part of the intro for Ask an Engineer just this week. But it's inside of a very cool arcade cabinet. Okay, and then we have JP's product pick of the week every week. The discount is embedded inside of the product page. You don't have to do anything. You just check out and it is yours at a discount. Here's this week's highlight.
PCM 5102 I2S DAC. This is a line level output DAC, high quality, low signal to noise ratio, so you get a beautiful audio out coming from digital on your microcontroller out to stereo audio over a 3.5 millimeter TRS jack. Here I have a QT Py, this is RP2040, and then here is my PCM 5102. I'm going to plug this in, and now I'm picking up the ground, power, and the 3 I2S data pins here. Then I'm going to plug into some powered speakers over that 3.5mm jack. ECM 5102 I2S DAC.
Okay, JP's workshop is on Thursdays. 3 Hangouts is during the morning on Wednesdays. Check it out. We'll play some videos from that and more. And then this Friday, this week, Tim is doing a deep dive. Mailbag's gonna be. Well, this is why it's different. Do you remember way back when, last week?
Oh, like a week and a half ago?
Yeah. We showed how to do some fun things on the Nintendo Alarmo.
This looks Photoshop, but it's actually real.
in partnership with iFixit. So we're like, hey, let's do a video together. There was no money exchanged. All we did was like, hey, what you do this part, we do this part. I like to compare things to skateboarding. It was like, let's show up and do some tricks together. So that was fun. But we also wanted to do something like, hey, let's make sure that we credit and celebrate the people who made it all possible, because there's a lot of open source software that goes into these things. So Gary has a Ko-Fi, and it's like, if you want to support my work, just click here, and we donated. And then you get this thing that says like, hey, congratulations, you donated. And then Gary saw it on Blue Sky, and he said, thanks for the support. So here's my idea.
Yeah.
I think that because of the current world we live in, I think a lot of people are afraid to show their support for stuff because it's very polarizing. Either you like this or that, you're on this side or that side. And that doesn't really work, but I can understand some people are like, I'm just never going to talk about anything I like or dislike anymore because I don't want to get anyone upset. You know, I can't do stuff. But there's other things in our lives.
How did we get here?
Well, earlier today, I walked. Yeah. So I think what we could do is have people, when they use a piece of open source software, right? And the developer has a little thing that says like, sponsor me on GitHub. Now I know what someone's about to say in a second, but hear me out. There's GitHub. There's, there's Ko-Fi. Yeah. There's all these things.
Yeah.
So give them $20. Because clearly this isn't your life's mission of something that you're supporting. That it's like, look at like how we're propping up these open source software developers. It's such just like, hey, thanks so much. It's like a cash little tip. And I think it'll get that part of your brain working again, where you can be generous.
Yeah.
Just because you like something.
Yeah.
Not because you have to like show who you are to everybody to be on one side or the other. So I think this is just a good way that you could feel good for like a second. It'll go away, don't worry. But for like a few brief seconds, be like, hey, I used that thing, gave him $20. Like, who cares about even who they are? You just like said thank you. You just like, you tipped it. It was like seeing a musical performance on the street. I don't know if that trumpet player did something wrong.
Yeah.
He plays the trumpet really good. He probably got in some trouble. Anyways, that's the idea. What do you think?
I'm always into throwing people some cash when they do stuff.
Bucks, right?
Yeah.
They'll keep open source going. Speaking of open source hardware time. It's Arduino Day coming up, the 21st to 22nd. Ladyada is doing a talk.
Oh, yeah, we did a talk.
And you'll be there, and just look at the entire schedule. It is a big deal if you're into Arduino history like I am, because if you look at the lineup and everything, Arduino
time to throw out those images again. Those images are always like,
here's the very first Arduino.
Here's Massimo signing.
I resemble those remarks. So yeah. So you can send them $20 now. So the thing, so the thing is, if you look at who's there, these are like all the top like CEOs and CTOs of like chip companies, and like it's a big deal. You're doing an interview thing, Eben from Raspberry Pi is, but like I saw there's like SI and there's ARM. There's like just like everybody is there, because it's like big biz. They definitely have that as part of their wheelhouse now.
Look, it's a huge community. They've got pro, they've got makers, they've got, like to this day still probably the most popular development board. It's still used in like thousands of schools, millions of people have learned.
Yeah,
electronics
and
on
like
it.
a lot of open source is built on Arduino, so do check it out. And I think sometimes I can take this advice too. We're all very interested and motivated to keep Arduino a cool community and keep it open source. So sometimes I'm just like, hey, like look at this or look at that. So
Yeah.
try to keep it, try to be helpful, but I know sometimes it's probably annoying. Anywho, let's go to our guides. Ladyada,
This week. Yeah.
we got a bunch of new products, but we also have a bunch of guys.
Okay. Melissa updated the voice bonnet guide. Do check this out. The Braincraft, the voice bonnet both use the WM8690 codec chip. It's a great chip, but the drivers have been a bit of a to install on the latest Pi 5 and the latest Bookworm or whatever the latest version of Debian is. She's updated it and that works great on the Pi 5 in light and desktop mode. We're always trying to keep up with all the changes. It's exciting. JP's awesome project. I've been wanting to do a project like this for a long time. And
We had that in the intro.
yeah,
Yeah.
because we now have the Pi 5 PIO Matter support thanks to Jepler, and I thought this would be a great demo of using like a Pi 5 in a project. And in this case, it's a 2x2, 64 by 64 matrix, which makes it 128 by 128, which is perfect for Pico 8 because that's the fantasy console native resolution. So you can turn it from being a fantasy console into a real console. So it looks like it's emulating like a Nintendo game. It's not. This is a Pico 8 game that looks like it's like Dinky Kong or something. But you can play any Pico 8 program, and if you write games, you can then like play them. And I like this little art piece. You can hang it up on the wall. It's got speakers and a controller. Just a really fun Pi project.
Okay.
We're doing more experiments. Over here, Tim C with the Metro RP2350 because it has USB in. Thanks, Scott, for recommending we add a USB header and DVI video out. So you can actually do like it's kind of computery, right? Which was the theme of CircuitPython 9. So Tim C did a project making a little drawing game that uses a keyboard connected to the USB header and DVI output. And then keep going. We've got this really cool guide. You saw something similar to this on Instagram, and we made it inspired by.
That's no moon.
Yeah, it's a project. It's cool about this moon lamp is, of course, it can act as like it's got these like the craters are 3D printed, and so it has this like very, I don't say ripply. There's probably a word for the cratery effect, but it can also show the moon phase. I know it's not like the perfect phase. Don't correct me. It kind of gives you some sense of like, is it a full?
You can make your own moon. You can do your own moon. You can do all sorts of stuff with it.
But very beautiful moon lamp with a little bit extra smarts. And we've got a guide for the TPS 65-131 split power supply. A great board if you need negative 12 volts. And if you happen to also want plus 12 volts, it's there too, and you can adjust the voltage. Liz did a great guide for that. And then if you liked that Pico 8 project and you're like, I want to know more about RGB matrix panels with PIO, I'll put on the Pi 5. Tim C wrote a guide for the code that Jepler wrote to get you started.
Well, those lunar lander games are right. It's pretty hard.
It is. There's a lot of jumping.
But it's really hard to land stuff on the moon.
It is.
They were right. They tried to warn us. It's not just like, just go park. It's not like parallel parking. Okay, let's do some 3D printing. We're going to show a few different things, and we'll come back over the break. I think I'm going to skip rapid render because it's 4.5 minutes long.
Yeah.
So we'll just squeeze in more stuff, but I'll briefly mention rapid render in a second.
Yes.
Okay, so we have a segment that we do each week. Watch it on all the places you watch video. Rapid render is all these automation tools, AI tools to help you like type in something or upload a photo, and then it starts to do some 3D work for you. Try to get like 80% of the way, or like sometimes it's hardware that you do a scan. So there's a lot out there. A lot of it's junk, a lot of it's not so great, and like maybe one thing's gonna be good and we'll find it one day maybe, but tune in each week. And let's do a couple of videos.
You can build an LED moon lamp that displays the phases of the moon. This IoT lamp features a 3D printed model that has craters and textures from the surface of the moon. It uses a NeoPixel strip to display the phases of the moon by lighting up different sections of the LED strip. Powered by the Adafruit QT Py ESP32S2, it uses the FarmSense API to get the phase of the moon. The CircuitPython code gets information from the FarmSense API and uses the Adafruit IO time API to fetch the Unix timestamp. The current phase is returned as a string from the API, and each phase has a function that turns the necessary LEDs on or off to display the moon phase. The NeoPixel LED strip wraps around the 3D printed moon to illuminate the edges, creating a moonlit effect. These parts are all you need to build one yourself. Links are in the description. You can 3D print the parts using your favorite black and white filaments. We just need to solder up a 3-pin JST cable to connect the Cutie Pie to the NeoPixel LED strip. We measured the length of the strip to cut so that we can fit it around the 3D printed moon. The Cutie Pie snap fits into a holder that is secured to the 3D printed frame. The LED strip is press fitted into a perfectly sized channel that runs along the inside of the frame. A 3D printed bezel snap fits over the frame and hides any hot spots from the LEDs, making a nice and smooth LED diffuser. We hope this inspires you to check out the Cutie Pie ESP32S2 and CircuitPython for your next IoT project.
Okay, before we go to INMPI, reminder, hypercase. It's better than just a regular case. It's hypercase. 10% off in Adafruit Store all the way to 11:59 p.m. And you get free stuff along the way as well. And if you're in New York, don't forget there is same day shipping. Okay, here we go.
Okay.
INMPI brought to you by DigiKey and Adafruit. Ladyada, what is this week's company and what did they do? And what is the new product introduction of the week this week?
Okay, this week's company is Boreas. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Their videos were in French, so it was very hard for me to pick out the name of the company. They make really cool piezo drivers and stuff, and I've never featured them, so I thought it would be great to have them on this week's INPI. I love to feature new and small companies as well. So this week we're talking about the 1931 from Boreas. It is a very impressively powerful and complete piezo haptic driver. There's also a pump driver. I'll talk about that in a second. Piezos are these discs that you can put voltages across and they'll give you mechanical movement, or you can give them mechanical movement and they'll give you a voltage, the current generation. They're very thin and they're very inexpensive, and often they're used as like piezo beepers and stuff. But you could also use them as haptic drivers because they will, if you think about it, like if you put an AC waveform that is audio frequency, you hear it, but it's also, you can have it mechanically move. So I've seen piezos used for like moving lenses or samples for little pumps, microfluidics. Like I said, they're very small, but they do have a couple of weird things about them that requires you to have a driver. You can't, it's not trivial to set them up and get them going. So this chip, what's nice about it is there's two versions. There's a 21 and the 31. And the 21 has the ability to do reading, but otherwise, what's really cool about it is not only does it have a boost converter, it also has this waveform generator and the driver. And like the waveform generator is like a full sequencer. So no matter what you need to do with your piezo, this chip is going to help you do it and offload a lot of the work of making a waveform that the piezo you're using will like. So you can get it to do what you want it to do. In this case, it has like a FIFO or it has a waveform generator. It also has the boost converter built in, which is neat. So if you see at the bottom there, the supply voltage is 3 to 5.5 volts. But then if you look at the top, the voltage that it can generate is 110 max. It's actually 90 volts is what they recommend. And then it will do the differential drive for you. So you actually get plus or minus about 200 volts across a piezo, which is a lot. You can really drive a piezo very hard at 200 volts as long as it's rated for that. Which reminds me, don't forget to, if you're doing that, get a piezo that's rated for that voltage peak to peak. Here's some piezos. I just searched for piezo on DigiKey. They have, thousands of different variants and sizes. A lot of them are like, they're meant for audio. So they're like, maybe 5, 10, 15, 30 volt peak to peak. But in specific, this chip seems to be designed not only for, but one of the big use cases is for piezoelectric micropumps, which I was like, I've never heard of active cooling with piezos. But what it's used for is stuff like phones. Like, remember 2 weeks ago, we talked about using Peltiers, which are a thin way of making a coolant. Like, heating stuff is easy, cooling stuff is kind of hard. But you need a gigantic heat sink. You have to get the heat away from the hot surface of because it does a differential. It's not just like
reducing entropy.
Yeah.
Entropy ain't easy.
It's not. And you're just moving it around. And you can't necessarily put a fan in thin devices like a phone, but the processors are getting so powerful that you do need to get the heat away. And sometimes the case isn't, it's not, the metal in the case isn't good enough to get heat away. So you actually use a piezo disc, that yellow and silver thing, and it acts like a pump. You make, it's a very small pump, but you don't need to have a lot of liquid. You just have to move it consistently. And by vibrating the disc up and down, you can move the fluid around the back of the phone. So, it seems like it's be used in 1 or 2 phones, like a Huawei phone and another phone. I couldn't quite figure out exactly what phone uses this technology, but I think there's other use cases. Like, again, I've heard of people doing microfluidics where you want to move small amounts of liquid around. You need a pump. This pump is extremely thin and small compared to an electromagnetic based pump. Okay. As mentioned, there's 2 versions. There's the 21 and the 31. The 21 is bidirectional. So not only is it an actuator, but it's also a sensor. So it'll detect presses and presses and like vibrations and stuff. Because like I said, piezos work both ways. They can generate electrical output. You can generate charge from mechanical movement or mechanical movement from charge motion. In this case, this chip can do both. The 21, the 31 only does one direction. So if you're like in the 1921, can only do actuator settings. But if you want to have it, what's interesting is if you are using this pump in a phone, I wonder if you could also use it as like a sensor for detecting if the pump is working or maybe if the phone is being tapped. Okay, some interesting stuff there. Again, it doesn't have to be used for that pump usage, but it seems to be like one of the requested, or one of their customers requested it. Usage is actually pretty simple. You've got the load. What's nice is it's a direct drive. You don't need to have any like driving H-bridge or transistors. There's a mini pump, the C pump. That's just, I think, to create a 5-volt input. And then there's the boost converter. So you do need an inductor to generate the output voltage, which, like I mentioned, you can configure it to be up to 90 volts. And then you can control the whole thing from I3C or I2C. We covered I3C before. It is back compatible with I2C. So if you don't have I3C support, don't worry about it. You can use I2C. To drive the piezos, like other haptic devices, you'll want to use different waveforms to create different like effects. You have people who use ERAs and LRAs. There's like hard click, soft click, and like ramp up, ramp down. You have to create these waveforms, and you don't want to do it in real time because you just kind of want to tell the chip, hey, create this like click waveform and let the main processor go back to doing its thing. There's a FIFO. You can like have a customized waveform if you want to like do byte by byte sample generation. There also seems to be like a sine wave envelope generator. So you can say, look, I just want you to do a sine wave, and then I'm going to tell you the amplitude, because you do need to give piezos sine waves. Like, you can't, it's not a DC voltage, it's an AC voltage. And there's also like this kind of cool like waveform generator where you can take different slices of sine chunks and cosine chunks, and then you can combine them together in like, like sync pulses ish looking things, or like sine envelopes. And then you can use the different blocks and like paste them together to create waveforms. If you don't want to, fill that FIFO buffer with every single byte of the waveform, and you're like, well, I basically want, a gentle slope up and slope down of like a sine type wave, whatever. Here you go. You can basically like patch together all of these waveforms and send to the chip and tell it it'll just like go and do it. And if you're like, this sounds very confusing, don't worry, there's Haptic Studio. So you can go there and you can kind of, use their tool, and it'll tell you the I2C commands to generate the waveforms you want.
Haptic Studio should be the name of a place that you go and get fit.
I know.
Stuff like that. I want to like work out at Haptic Studios.
Yes. Okay. And with playback, yes, they can do like repeat, and like you can do all these. I mean, it's like a very advanced like data sheet. I started reading about this and I was already like, okay, I'm spending like an hour just reading about how to do the waveform generation. Basically, here's the thing. Any waveform you want, you can generate it. No question. Great. Comes in 2 packages. There's the QFN. I don't believe the QFN the 31 is available yet, but it's probably coming soon. The QFN, easier to solder, but bigger. Or you can go with the BGA, the WLCSP, much smaller, very much more compact, good for tiny wearables like watches or phones or whatnot. But of course, it's going to need a 4-layer board with plugged vias for it. Either way, it is a boost converter, so you can't just like slap down the parts wherever you want. You do have to kind of obey the layout to make sure that, if you're going for, plus minus, 90 volts into the piezo, that's a lot of voltage that you're generating from like, 3 volts or 3.7 volts. You want to make sure that you have good efficiency. So follow their layout recommendations. As you can see, QFN's a little easier to lay out, but you'll get half the size if you use the BGA. Either way, the inductor and the output capacitor are going to be a little bit big. Not much you can do about that. If you want to get started immediately, there's Val boards in stock for the 1921, which you can use with that Haptic Studio while you get fit. And the chip itself is in stock at DigiKey. Really cool. I'm, we have a haptic driver, but not, of course not as complicated as this. But I think I've seen a lot of people in like science, medical, like high-tech stuff. You're dealing with small things. They use piezos a lot to move stuff or adjust things because they're so sensitive compared to electromagnetic, haptic, or sensing devices. So check out this chip as a driver. That kind of does everything for you.
Okay.
Thanks, Boreas.
That's I on NPI.
I on NPI.
Okie dokie, we're going to do new products. Before we do new products, the code is hypercase. Let's kick it. Okay.
First up, we've got the Motion 2350 Pro from Cytron. Love their stuff. This is like an intense board. It's got a lot going on. It's kind of an all-in-one robotics controller with RP2350 on the bottom. It's got power supply management. It's got USB host, I guess maybe bit banged. It's got 8 servo driver things. It's got 8 sensor inputs. It's got 4 DC motor drivers, or I guess you can do 2 steppers, on-off switch, power it from 3.6 to 16 volts. So it's great from battery, or if you're using like a lithium ion, lithium polymer, AA's, lead acid, piezo, kind of everything you want. They make cool stuff. I think we have the RP2040 version of this. Nice update, really good all-in-one robotics, mechatronics board for almost any use.
And then the sound is off on this video, but you can check it out on our product page. But you can get an idea of some of the stuff it can do and a little bit more about it. It's about a minute or so. Check it out there. Next up.
Okay, we've also had a request to have some of our ESP32 feathers come with external antenna support. So we have the versions with PCB antennas, but if you want to put this in a case and you want to have the antenna on the outside, you'll need this version that has a WFL connector. You're going to need a WFL to RPSMA adapter, which we stock in the store. I like to warn people, it's not UFL, it's WFL, which is slightly different. It's like IPEX 3, not IPEX 2. I don't know. It's not, it's a tinier size, but don't worry, it's still, you can get parts from DigiKey if you want to have antennas or connectors, or like I said, you can use an adapter and then use your RPSMA cable. Other than that, it's identical to our existing, I think it's existing, this is the same as product 5000, which is our ESP32S2 Feather. This one, like I said, has 4 megabytes flash, 2 megabytes PSRAM. Same, except WFL.
Okay, next up.
Got a bunch of cases. First up, here's a 3D printed enclosure for the Sparkle Motion. Noe and Pedro have been killing it, making these enclosures that let people, protect and attach our boards. Our boards have mounting holes, but sometimes you want something less bare bones. It has the reset button, or the boot button, which one, as a little nib. The DC jack, the terminal blocks are exposed. There's holes for the IR input and little slots on this. There's a slot on the side for the JST outputs and USB. And then I like how the outputs are marked because you may not be able to see it from when it's in the case. And easy to put together. Audio, don't worry about it. The case is not soundproof, so the microphone will work just fine. And this works with the larger Sparkle Motion, the one that can do like 12 volts.
Yeah. All right, and start the show tonight. Besides you, Ladyada, our team, the customers, the community, everybody who makes this thing go. And for the nice people who donate $20 or so to open source projects, them too. But we have some hardware.
Okay.
It's this one.
Do we have also the case for the mini Sparkle Motion?
Oh, it's so cute.
So cute. So this is the tiny version. It doesn't do 12 or 24 volts, but it does do 5 volts, and it has microphone built in, ESP32. It's great for making WLED projects. And we have a little case for it as well with the slots and the connectors. So if you're using this, especially in wearables or art projects that are mounted, you can quickly put this in the case, snap it closed, and protect it during use.
Okay, and a lot of these enclosures, it's because also you're going to be doing things with Sparkle Motion outside in some way too.
Yeah.
Like it'll help it be a little bit more
Like
weather
if
resistant.
you want like your bag or your bicycle to
Yeah.
have it. It's like you'll put it in something else, but this just keeps it from
Yeah.
getting like banged up when you
Yeah.
also toss in your bottle.
We understand you got to have context of where you are. Read the room. Little microcontroller, put on the enclosure.
Okay.
That's it. Okay, what we're going to do is a bunch of top secret, and then we have a bunch of questions, and if there's any in Discord, we'll be getting to those, but let's do some top secret.
Okay.
Okay, first up in top secret, as you know, we are working on a game called The Great Search. And on The Great Search, we have a little bit of gameplay. Don't worry, it works on Android and Android phones and derivatives of Androids.
What about Android though?
Yep.
What about Chromos?
Yep. And also, of course, iOS and all things we're using Godot. So it should work pretty much everywhere.
What about Linux?
Yep.
Wow.
And so I'm going to check out the progress maybe every couple weeks or so where it's at, showable form, and we're going to make a little video. This is from Trevor. So check it out. It's about a minute or so. and for this one, I was going to start at like at the end of the story,
Okay.
which is like this is probably going to be the Fruit Jam logo we're going with. Right now, we like it, and we weren't really sure if we're going to go with the Fruit Jam name, but it really kind of
We thought,
it grew on us.
yeah.
We have a lot of other options, but you know, people naming things with fruit in game consoles has been going on for a while, and so I did want to show a little bit of the process. So.
Okay.
So this was like one of the things I was like thinking of, these like kind of dots that are fruit that could like kind of come in different ways.
The pineapple's kind of funny.
Yeah, and I thought like these are kind of interesting. So I'm like, hey, you know, Brucey's our lead designer. I'm like, hey, let's like figure out if there's a way to do it in some way. I like some of the Pearl Jam art over the years too. I didn't tell them anything about how they put like P and then J in some of their things. But it looked like there was like a couple strong ones here. So we're like, okay, let's look at it in black and white. And then we came up with this. And then, okay, it's like, it's Fruit Jam.
Fruit Jam.
So, you know, it gives you a little bit of an idea of how a bill becomes a law. But we're also thinking of how we're going to do animations and how it's going to be on a PCB. And today in our internal meeting, I was like, you know, what's funny? We're launching a little tiny game console, live, open source, in front of everyone. And just, you know, we'll never launch the Xbox 720. Like that is, it's an entire nation state of people and involvement and licensing.
Pigs had to die.
And licensing and like the entire world. Like it's so heavy. And so it's maybe as one person you can have an impact in that, but you could make your own little gaming console right now with a $1 chip that does like Mac emulation. So anyways, that's super cool. So we have a lot of videos. And we're going to go through them. This one's clickety clack. I'll play it and then we'll hop on to the next one. And then let's see, we've got like 3 or 4 minutes of them. So buckle up and then we'll see on the other side with some questions.
Get your retro on.
Yeah. Hey, Ladyada, what's a clacking?
Clicking a clacking. This is my solenoid driver from I2C board that I designed a couple months ago, and I'm finally wrapping it up. It uses an MCP 23017, and that has 16 GPIO pins connected over I2C. I have 8 little solenoids here. And then actually the test program I'm running right now, what I do is as I ground each of the B port pins, it will control the matching solenoid. It's a good way to like kind of test, making sure they all activate and they're really nice and fast. I've also done like a demo where it turns all the solenoids on and that worked fine. So this is good to go. I'm going to book these up and get them into the Adafruit shop. Only change I'm going to do is making the board a little bit taller. I'm going to add LEDs to each of the I/O pins because I think that'll be useful for people to see.
Okay.
All right, sweet. Clicky clack.
Ladyada, what is this?
This is my RP2350 based Fruit Jam mini computer, and this is a board that I designed with the RP2350 chip that has like 2 USB ports with a hub, on-off switch, lots of buttons, HDMI, DVI output, audio, and USB. And it's kind of designed to be able to run or create like little computers. And so one of my favorite computers, the one that I grew up with, was like the Mac 512K. Get close to that Chicago font. You know, sometimes we see like restaurants with a Chicago font. We're like, how did you even get that?
Can you go to about this Mac? This is on a Fruit Jam.
Yes.
Keep that in mind.
So this is running Pico Mac. But what's cool about this is Jepler spent the week porting it to use HSTX. So this is on the RP2350 and it uses the DVI output. So you don't need like VGA connectors or resistors or whatever. You plug it in and then there's a little memory thing you can tweak it. And because it's running on the Pico 2350, which has 520K of RAM, you can give it a ton of extra RAM and so you can run programs on it. So right now I just have like the system font, and what's really neat is obviously like mouse is working, which is cool, using PIO. So you're not using the native USB, you're actually bit banging the USB, and it's doing low speed mouse just fine. And then if we go to like keycaps, for example, and you come out a little bit, you can type, well, except I can't type, hello world, Mac rules, PC tools. Yeah, keyboard and mouse working. So the next thing I'm going to try to get working, if Jepler doesn't get to it before me, is there's an SD card slot on here, which would allow us to basically treat that as like a floppy drive. You could put an image on an SD card. Look, man, I just want to play. Dark Castle again, okay? And then also audio. I don't know if audio was ever working on this
Maybe.
port, but we'll try because I think that'd be cool too.
Okay, cool. Good work.
Hi, Chipler here with 2 quick updates on PicoMac on the Fruit Jam. First up, we are now supporting up to 4 megabytes of memory by moving the main memory of the Macintosh into the PSRAM chip. Next up, I'd like to implement sound in the PicoMac emulator. And the first step towards that is I've added this white bar here at the edge of the display, and that is showing the sound buffer in RAM. So when I drag the speaker volume, it's going to play a tone, and you're going to see that there in this area of the screen. I'll drag it again and show you a second time. So that's the sound data. We know where it is. We know how often it repeats. And now we just need to send it out of an I2S DAC.
All right, Ladyada, what is this?
Okay, this is System 6. Now, I'll tell you, System 7.1 was the best of all the Mac OS systems, but System 6 wasn't too bad. This is running not on a Mac 6800 or Mac Plus. This is running on the Fruit Jam board RP2350 chip. And it's got 4 megabytes of RAM, if you remember. That's because we have PSRAM working. Chepler got that working today. And so what this means is we actually start running. If you only have 128 or 400K, you're kind of stuck on System 3. I don't actually remember, was there? I think there was 4 and 5, but I don't know, I blanked out. The really interesting stuff comes up with System 6. So we have System 6 now. It's on PSRAM. We're still debugging it, like it's very fresh. So like the mouse is being a little funky. Like I'm moving it in a circle and you see it's kind of doing this like triangular motion a little bit. So it works as long as your mouse is really slow. Again, I think there's some like IRQ, like we have to service the USB a little bit more. It's a little slower because we're using PSRAM, not true RAM. But like I said, we're using System 6. So we get to have stuff like control panel, which means we get to have, move to the corner there, flying toasters. Yeah, your classic After Dark flying toasters here in a beautiful monochrome. And it's not too bad. It's not too slow. Like I said, the issue is mostly the mouse servicing is still being wonky. If you look over here, this is a really cool debugging hack that Jepler did. So the PicoMac emulator doesn't have sound support, which I get. It's kind of like, funky and weird.
Sure, Jepler isn't sending plans from Vega on how to build something to go to
Like
another.
flying toasters.
No.
So what you see here is this chunk of memory that's mapped into the video buffer. And you see the bottom byte of the word, this is a 16-bit word, is static. And I believe that's the floppy drive controller, the motor controller. But you see this top byte is moving a lot. It's like flickering. That's the sound buffer. And it's actually an 8-bit PWM signal. And it's timed to like 370 bytes per scan line, I think, or frame, whatever. Ends up being 22 kilohertz if you do the math out. So the next step is we have this I2S DAC on here. And we could use PIO to grab that data from the memory that does the audio and buffer it out so you can have a little speaker or headphones to play the audio. Just like I remember my Mac Plus had a little headphone jack. So System 6 working. I got those flying toasters, so that's good. The next thing I want to do is try to get HyperCard running.
Okay. Another good demo.
Another good demo. Fly, my pretties, fly.
All right, Ladyada, what is this?
Okay, it's getting late, but
Yeah.
I'm not one to give up. Got the Fruit Jam board, RP2350, dual Cortex M33, overclocked, DVI output, USB hub, keyboard, mouse. We got the PSRAM working, so we have basically emulating a Mac Plus with 4 megabytes of RAM, although that RAM is in the PSRAM. It's a little bit slow. And this time I also extended the disk drive. So before the disk drive was fitting in like what it thought was 4 megabytes of flash, but this actually has 16 megs. So I made a 12 meg disk, which means now we can fit HyperCard on there.
Yeah.
So HyperCard, for those who don't know about it, was a program that let you make multimedia. You could have animations and graphics and buttons.
Pre-internet.
Pre-internet, yeah, never.
Or
I
a precursor to the idea.
maybe eventually they added the ability to do, and you could link to other stacks. So this actually links to another stack, and you can. There's a little tutorial. The mouse is still being a little funky. I got like buttons.
Amazing. This
and
works.
you
You know what's
press-
interesting is this is a computing experience that brings back memories that how often had you have to think about clicking through HyperCard?
Protect your stack.
It's been a really long time.
And then we wanted to like give a shout out to a friend of the fruit.
Well, I'm going to send this to Bruce Sterling as soon as we post it up.
In case you're like, I want his email address. Yeah, I noticed what's funny is, you know, how much shareware has like people's physical address, emails, phone numbers. We were just chatting about that. So
Bruce just did a keynote at South by Southwest again.
Yeah.
And so as I'm looking at that in his recreation of like tricorders and stuff,
look,
I'm going to send him this.
They didn't have a license yet. They were
Not
like,
for commercial.
what is, you know?
It's literary freeware. I wonder how that
What
license
does
is
it
doing.
even mean?
Okay.
Okay, so you can page through this.
Yeah, look, could email. Hey.
Yeah, you can email him and you can go through the book. So I mean,
cool.
HyperCard's cool. So we'll be doing more, and we'll get audio working, and then we can actually run a lot more stacks.
Very cool. Sorry for doxing Bruce Sterling. We're friends with him. We email him all the time. That's the animation we're thinking of doing for the thing. So we have some ideas on how we can make it real because we have sprites and other things. So that's top secret this week. There's a lot.
Get back in that vault.
Okay, well, don't forget, save money.
Questions.
10%.
Okay, we're gonna get questions. We're gonna speed around and make sure we get to absolutely everything, and then you have the other ones. Is it a dual band GNSS? That is the GPS teardown.
So our ultimate GPSs can actually do. Yes, a lot of them can do 2 or even 4 bands. Bands. It can read. I'm assuming what they mean is, can it listen to Beidou and GLONASS and Galileo? And the answer is some of our GPSs do and some of them don't. Most of them these days do, but check the product page to be sure.
Next up, any chance can emulate a 6803 or 04? Does it have the 6800 chip, but running much faster than a real 68K? Some later apps needed 030 or 040 or even a 6882 MathCo. Awesome project, just signed up to be notified when it's out.
It's kind of struggles to do the 68,000. You know, I'll say it's not super optimized. It's a very, I don't want to say simplistic. It's obviously does a really good job, but it's not tweaked out. And so once you add PS RAM, it's slower than the original. And so like stuff like audio won't be so great. I think when you're using the internal SRAM, I think it can run at exactly 68,000 speed. I don't believe it can do an 030. I think for that, you would need a 600 megahertz processor, not an overclocked M33.
Okay, this one, I know everyone uses it because it's electrically insulating, can be under high temperature without breaking down. But I want to know, is it thermally conductive or insulating? Because some people use it as thermal insulator while others use the conductor, and it confuses me so much. Thank you. This is for the Kapton tape.
Okay, so that's actually a question. So what's nice about Kapton tape is it doesn't melt. And so in a sense, it can be it can be a thermal insulator because you can, solder next to it and it doesn't like curl up. However, it's very thin. So other than that, it is a conductor. So it kind of depends on how you use it. It's often used on 3D printers to like attach a sensor to a hot end, and you don't have to worry about the glue. Like the tape it will handle the heat of the hot end. So
yeah.
So both.
Is this one of those times where its feature is it does neither one of those things great, but it does them okay a little bit?
Yes, it's an excellent. Well, yeah, it's kind of. It depends on your usage. I wouldn't use obviously I would not use it as a heat sink.
No.
It's not a good use of as a heat sink buffer or transfer.
Yeah.
Like there's other devices that do that. This is a tape that is electrically insulated.
Okay.
But can be hot.
Next up, this is lots of Fruit Jam questions. It would be great to have a tiny microcomputer that focuses on emulating early home computers. So many projects seem to focus on console games. I've always wanted something I can run as a TRS-80, Apple II. All early Macs, program a little basic for funsies. Yeah, that's what we're thinking.
Yeah, some of these things may be already done. But some, hopefully, other people contribute.
Okay, working on a Squeak Small Talk port.
You know, I vaguely remember Squeak Smalltalk. Look, if it'll run on a 68,000, and yeah, if it needs a lot of RAM, you know, you'll need to use the PS RAM. Will be a little bit slower, but yeah, like I remember this guy who I worked with was a huge Smalltalk fan. I can't remember his name.
Okay, does it have enough I/O to get SCSI working on it? Someone in the chat asked about SCSI, so this will answer their question too. Even
Okay.
if it took SPI I/O expander.
But so there's not enough extra GPIO for SCSI. But here's the thing, folks. SCSI is the same essentially as mass storage, right? So you could plug in a USB key and like possibly make a SCSI to mass storage USB converter because it's like the same commands. There's also an SD card slot. So if you just want like a bigger disk, you would just
Could you do an
have
SD card to SCSI?
I mean, what do you want SCSI for, right? Because it was usually used for disk drives, and if it's you just want a disk drive, there's a micro SD card slot, and we even wired it up for SDIO. You could have really faster than SCSI emulation, disk drive support.
So it'd say like CD-ROM or something.
I would just take the CD-ROM, make the ISO, and then like again load it onto the micro SD
Yeah.
card.
Well, you know what's interesting?
Micro SD cards are like
As this
6
comes out,
gigabytes, 8 gigabytes.
let us know what you use SCSI for, because that's interesting.
It does not have enough raw pins left over after all of the peripherals and stuff on the Food Jam.
Next up, this period in the video, 6 minutes 30 seconds. The split looks great for all of those op-amp circuits using the classic split rail design. How clean is the output if it is clean enough for RF projects?
So it's a boost, so it's never going to be that clean. However, I purposely made it so you could like turn it up to 15 volts or 14 volts, and then you can use a really good PSSR low dropout regulator, and that should get you a cleaner power supply. Because one way or the other, you're going to have a booster or an AC waveform, right? So you can always like get a little higher, give yourself plenty of room, and then have a very clean power supply that uses that higher voltage and cleans up the messiness that you might get from the booster.
Okay. Next up, is there a tutorial that could be put up on Adafruit Learning Guide for Claude? We have thoughts on that.
So, you know, I've done videos. I'll tell you the thing. Things are moving so fast that I've done videos on Claude, but I'm worried about documenting something that is changing so rapidly. So we did one on ChatGPT 4, we did one on Claude Sonnet, and then we just did one on Claude Code. It's just things are moving way too quickly to do a tutorial.
Yeah. I think you should watch how Ladyada here uses these tools completely agnostic of the specific LLM, because there's an approach I think that seems to be materializing, like how you do prompts and like how you start to structure your questions and how you have to like kind of cut and paste code around. And then eventually there was something like Claude Code. And I think a lot of these LLMs are going to do something similar. And it seems like they're all going on like a collision course, but they're specialized. Like Claude Code specifically seems to be for someone like you who's like lived in a terminal and a lot of file manipulation. So just watch the target. It's kind of like read Newton's Principia to figure out how like Newton was thinking. Not necessarily like, you know, eventually we had to do other things.
Yeah.
But it was a good book to see how someone thought to get to a process.
Yeah.
So awesome. Does MacDraw work? Can we draw in the CLRS style?
Of course, MacDraw works, because if you're getting flying toasters working, I mean, it is the full operating system. I mean, you could. I will say again, the PSRAM is not. It slows it down kind of significantly-ish. So at this time, anything that can handle running in 400K of SRAM is going to work best and fastest.
Okay. I'm using HSUB 2388 breakout to get my 12 volts to light LEDs, the 480 meter per strip, and I want to use PWM to dim the LEDs. What would be my best option? Some of the MOSFET, or is there a breakout board that would work?
To be honest, actually, you know, we have a Neo RGB board that lets you, if you give it 12 volts, will then let you drive the whole thing as one RGB NeoPixel LED, and that's the easiest way to do it. Or yeah, just use individual MOSFETs.
Are these contributions, this is from our Fruit Jam thing, contributions making their way back to the project GitHub?
We have already done a couple PRs. Jepler has this in a fork. The fork is public. Everything is pushed there. It is not complete. It's not documented, but it does build. Go to town.
Okay. Where do you get OS ROMs? Is it true emulation without the need for Apple's ROMs?
No, you always need the ROMs because there's no way to emulate without the ROM. Like the ROM has the runtime of the hardware, but you can get ROMs from archive.org, and frankly, nobody cares.
Pure as Apple is like, you know what? It's yours.
moved
It's yours. World.
Yeah, it's like,
okay.
You know what I mean? Like, I mean, yeah.
I mean, unless it becomes really useful. So any upcoming news on the Feather RP2350 with USB host?
We're waiting until we can get lots of RP2350 chips. I think that'll happen next week. We'll start making more ones.
For our clickety clack. How does the board handle the spike of the solenoid, especially if the multiple are actuated simultaneously?
I mean, I might test, like I could actuate multiple ones at a time. Of course, your power supply has to handle it. There's like a 22 microfarad cap on there. Look, your power supply is your responsibility. This is just the driver. But there is, flyback diodes. You provide the current, it will drive the solenoid.
BYOPS.
For your own power supply.
Always be closing. So the question about what SCSI people said, the Kurzweil keyboard uses SCSI scanner and storage. There is SCSI for Ethernet cards and Wi-Fi, I guess. Like SCSI things for that.
Tell you what,
rescue zips, bulky things.
Rescue zip disks. So
I like zip disks because you'd walk across the room,
and they would break on the way,
and they would somehow
screen fucking working, guys. Like it's over.
It didn't work 10 feet away. Never mind even like 10, 40, 30 years. Like
it doesn't work. Okay, so could you have SCSI? Look, if you don't mind it being unbelievably slow, yes, you could use a GPIO expander. There are like 10 pins available. So it's not enough for a full SCSI, which I think requires like 20 pins.
It seems like you want SCSI. Do you need SCSI? You need it.
I mean, you could do. I mean, you could do it.
I think for the collector, maybe there's the collector. They're like, you know what? I want to like get this SCSI thing to work on this. SCSI doesn't emulate click of death.
It's a hack, but you could do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Someone will do it. Someone will do it. Someone will do it.
You could do it. I will say I don't believe that the UMAC emulator has SCSI or it hacks floppy drive support.
Okay.
So look, I'll be honest, it's not a priority for me. I do not have any more. I don't have my what was the name of that scanner everybody had? I think the gigantic one.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
It's not Logitech. Anyways, I don't have my scanner. I don't have my zip disks. So if somebody adds it to UMAC, it'll compile into PicoMac, and then you'll have SCSI.
Okay, that's our questions.
Yeah.
That's our show, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We'll see everybody next week at 8 p.m. We do Ask an Engineer every single week. Please pick up something. Hypercase. There's only HP ScanJet.
It was not the HP ScanJet. No.
I remember that one though.
I know, but and you know what I'm talking about.
Was it an Apple one? Was it the one that Apple made?
It was look, it was in, what was it, like Mac Warehouse? It was always in like Mac Warehouse. It was this gigantic flatbed scanner. It was like the Cirrus.
The ViewSonic.
It's sort of the C.
The Claris.
No, but I loved Claris.
Let's see if someone's in the chat. That's why streaming shows are dangerous, because you start doing like a trivia thing and it's like, well, we'll figure it out tonight.
Yeah.
I know I will.
Because they eventually had color. It was amazing. I was like, whoa, scanner. You can see things.
Yeah.
Okay, anyways, I don't have one.
Pro. Okay. That's our show. This has been
somebody asked one more question. They said, can it play Shuffle Puck Cafe? And you can click on this. Yes.
Did you say Shuffle Puck Cafe?
Yes, it can play Shuffle Puck Cafe.
Okay, this has been Adafruit Production, everybody.
Bye.
Here's your moment of Zener.
Good night, everybody.